Hey folks, this is Michael with the ccerp podcast, Cypress Creek Ecological Restoration Project. So we're back with what, episode 4, episode 5, I forgot. We got a quick episode here, so we got to better jump into it. Today we're talking to Susan Chadwick of Save Buffalo Bayou. Could you say hi, Susan?
Hi there.
And could you tell us folks a little bit about yourself?
Well, I grew up in Houston on Buffalo Bayou, in a neighborhood out at the end of Woodway and Voss, and I was fortunate to get to play on the sandy banks of the bayou as a child. And there was still a neighborhood in development, so there was also probably native prairie in a lot of the lots out there.
Wow.
Because it had been just cattle ranch and cotton fields out there. Woodway was still an oyster shell road. I guess I'm dating myself here.
Wow.
But anyway, so I grew up, went to school here, went away to school, and my background is journalism. I was the art critic for the Houston Post until it shut down some time ago. And I lived in France for about 14 years. And when I came back, I had some friends who were involved in, including a neighbor, involved in trying to stop a project called the Memorial Park Demonstration Project that would have stripped and altered and dredged beautiful, one of the last remaining publicly accessible forested stretches of Buffalo Bayou. In the city along Memorial Park, opposite River Oaks Country Club. So we started a campaign. Actually, the campaign was already started. I just came along and thought I could help do some publicity and communications for that. There were some people from the Sierra Club and Jim Blackburn and other people. So it just grew from there.
Cool. And were you all successful in getting the woods to stay there?
Yes.
Good. Nice.
Yes. Although since then, unfortunately, the River Oaks Country Club has gone ahead and destroyed the bank on the south side, putting in sheet piling and bulldozing it up, and it's pretty sad. Not all of it, in 3 big places. So anyway.
Yeah, it's one thing in general. It reminds me issue that needs to be addressed in the culture, just the concept of development, what people consider development. Just like from a long time ago, if someone doesn't tear it up and do something on it, it's not considered developed, quote unquote. But got to consider that we're part of nature and we need that, and like evolution's developed it already, and we need to look at the value it provides for us, and
Absolutely.
not tear it down. Some of that.
It does provide a lot of benefit for us, and as well as a habitat for a lot of creatures, it also provides a lot of benefit for us. People don't realize that those trees and vegetation along the banks actually clean the water, as well as the structure of the soil itself. There are good microbes in there that help eat up the bad stuff, and it's really vital to cleansing the water, as well as, cleansing the runoff from our polluted, streets and pavement, and the plus it's just a lot more. I hesitate to say it's more beautiful because it's all. I don't like to emphasize that. I do emphasize that nature is not just a pretty face. It's it has a function.
Yeah.
And a benefit. And of course, there are a lot of people who just think that nature is messy. Try to order it up and mow it and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
but
it's
anyway.
Unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, is Buffalo Bayou and Cypress Creek, are they about the same age? Do you know? Or do we got to talk to a geologist about that?
Well, we usually say, Buffalo Bayou is about 18,000 years old, more or less. And nobody really knows that. You have to speak to one of our geologists to get a better read on that. But it was at one time, apparently it's a remnant sort of arm of the Brazos River, which is much older.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about tell me about Cypress Creek. How old do you think that is?
I'm not sure, but probably about at least the same, because Indians have lived on it for thousands of years. Forget some of the exact dates. I have to refresh myself on that. But I think there's evidence of people being here and not being here for a while, being here again. So it actually could be 20 or 30 or more. But that's something I've haven't looked at for a while, so I've forgotten. I have to refresh on that. But
yeah. Well, there used to be buffalo all around in here, and the buffalo, would cross from one side of Buffalo Bayou to the other, and I'm sure they did on Cypress Creek also.
Yeah. Is that why it's called Buffalo Bayou? Or what?
There's some debate about that. There's a lot of creeks. This is on our website under Bio Basics, but there are a lot of creeks and streams in Texas that are named Cibolo, which was the Spanish word for bison. Our buffalo, of course, are not really buffalo; they're bison. Yeah. And so probably this comes from an old or Indian name or something like that, old name for Buffalo Bayou.
Yeah, if folks didn't know that, yeah. Bison used to come down here regularly, and Cabeza de Vaca, who was a Spanish explorer who was enslaved by local Indians. He walked 3,000 miles pretty much barefoot and naked for a few years to get back to a Mexican settlement, Spanish settlement in Mexico. But he reported that. Pardon? Yeah. So people have written biographies about him. He took some notes when he was here. Too bad he didn't take more. That would be fascinating if he would have taken more detailed notes and we had more information.
Yes, it's hard when you're naked and barefoot.
Yeah, and then you don't know what's going to happen in the future. Yeah.
Right.
But at least it's some record. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
From 1530s, 1540s when he was here. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty, if not earlier, just about, right.
Yeah.
And didn't he go up through the Nueces River along up?
Well, from what I heard, some people think he might have gone a little north from Galveston, gone south of Austin, ended up going into Mexico around El Paso. But then I saw someone who looks like they've done deeper research, and they think he actually went along the coast to Corpus Christi and then passed into Mexico around what is it forgot the city more, but he would have gone maybe around to Corpus and then gone kind of west and gone into the city there into Mexico. I mean, the city wasn't there at the time, of course, but around that area. So, I found some maps and seeing what people think he did, and that's from what I've seen, the most recent, more comprehensive analysis of his notes and the plants he mentions, and looked at a paper and they talk about that. Plants he mentions, what kind of oak or whatever, and stuff like that, and the Indians and what they were like, so they think he went along the coast. Pretty fascinating. Yeah. It's all that
didn't he have to bring a gift moving from one tribe to the other or something like that? Wasn't there some kind of tradition like that?
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised, but yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
But yeah, it's
so
interesting.
Here we are. We still have our ancient streams. One of the things that we tried to emphasize about Buffalo Bayou is that, it was a historic nature area that you could see the geology of Houston. In fact, we have a geologist on our board who gives us also a river guide, and he gives classes in geology.
Oh, cool.
On the floating down the bayou and pointing out different layers of the, geologic time. Geology is very complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, like I've heard, I think it's along the Brazos somewhere, some geologists have found a place where they have evidence of a sandstorm from 60,000 years ago.
Wow.
That's pretty amazing to like look at the geological record and to know how things work. And oh, look, yeah, there's a sandstorm here.
Yeah. Well, also the creatures we have in Buffalo Bayou, I'm sure you'd have them too, are really, really, really old creatures and haven't changed much for thousands of years.
Yeah, they don't need to.
And I've been thinking a lot about the concept of a keystone species because beavers, for instance, are a keystone species, and
for folks who
even
don't
alligators.
know, can you tell folks what a keystone species is?
So a keystone species is a species that in their, natural functioning create habitat for other species, and the other species depend on them for the habitat that they create.
So like, that's a good metaphor, like, and then if you take the keystone away, the whole arch falls.
Right.
Kind of like the Yellowstone River thing. Or it's not, well, in the Yellowstone, it's actually, I forgot the name of the river. Lamar River, maybe. But up there in Yellowstone, people know about the wolves.
Yeah.
And the wolves would be like a keystone species.
Right.
Yeah. But, sorry, go ahead. But the beavers and alligators.
Yeah, and people think of beavers as just nuisances, but in fact, that what they do, helps create species like the alligator, for instance. This just, waving its tail around and burrowing around in the mud creates habitat for, lots of other creatures depend on that. But the interesting thing is that humans are not keystone species. They're just practically the opposite.
Yeah. And then it depends on the person. People can choose. It's one thing about people having free will, volition. People can choose to be a valuable part of the ecology in the world, or to be a horrible, miserable, less than human, like entity, wreaking havoc. Unfortunately, people can choose to be on either side.
Yeah, but we don't create habitat. No other creatures depend on us except for maybe our own pets. And but corn. They can still survive.
Yeah, corn, soy, some things like that.
Anyway,
yeah.
I don't know how there's enough room for all these giant creatures actually in Buffalo Bayou, because it's usually pretty shallow. I guess they just burrow down in the mud. We have gigantic alligator snapping turtles and alligators and huge alligator gar. Be like 12, 15 feet long. It seems like it would be pretty crowded in there.
Yeah. Interesting. They find a way to survive.
Yeah.
But
there, your cat is complaining.
Yeah. Kitty, come. Kitty. Hi. But so, could you tell folks about like some things about the geography? Cypress Creek and Buffalo Bayou would be pretty similar. So, what are some of the features we'll see out there in some of the geography?
Well, I think people don't realize that Buffalo Bayou is pretty much of a sandstone lined stream. It's one of the reasons why it's so, it's sort of remained in the same path as for a long time. I mean, I'm not a geologist. I'm just a journalist. I've learned a lot from other people about this, but I don't know. Do you have sandstone? I guess you must have sandstone too on Cypress Creek.
Probably. Basically, I've just seen the clay and the sand. Lots and lots of sand and lots of clay.
Well, it was a surprise to me that we have, because growing up here, we don't have rocks. Nobody.
Yeah.
But we do actually have, sandstone. It's not real hard rock. But there's a video on our website, our YouTube website, with our geologist, one of our geologists, Tom Helm, explaining the different kinds of sandstone that we have in Buffalo Bayou. And, beyond that, you can't ask me what, periods and names. I know, Beaumont, clay, and
Oh yeah.
Pleistocene, all of that sort of thing. But that's not my forte.
Yeah.
So, but it's visible, there you can see just the different epochs of the, our Earth and our region, and can also see what people don't realize that I've encountered people who think that bayous are just man-made ditches.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because many people don't have the opportunity to actually see them. They pass over Buffalo Bayou on a bridge, or they see Brays Bayou or White Oak Bayou, which has been concreted, and they don't realize that once upon a time those bayous and streams all were winding and lined with trees and vegetation and lots of wildlife also.
Yeah. Something we need.
Yeah.
Because we gotta. Seems like people have lost touch with nature and the facts of life and the culture. Got to realize more that there are certain things we depend upon, and if we want to survive, it's in our best interest to take care of those things. Because we don't, we evolved in with a lot of a context of a lot of complexity, and no one's ever proven that without that complexity, humans can still survive and function well. And in fact,
that's right.
What happens when you take us into space? Well, we break down and have all kinds of bone loss, muscle loss, psychological problems,
Yeah.
So I think we need that complexity around us, and when we get rid of it, it's to our detriment.
Well, it certainly is. Well, for one thing, we wouldn't have as clean. The air wouldn't be. We're doing our best to pollute the air anyway, but the trees and grasses and nature is trying to clean it up for us. And there's, I'm sure all kinds of scientific studies about the benefits, the mental and physical health benefits of nature, just even a walk in the park.
Yeah. So if we still had all that stuff around Brays and all that, the trees, the animals, the dirt, I think it'd be better for people. I don't think, I'm not aware of any studies, maybe you are there any studies that show that being around a bunch of concrete is good psychologically or mentally or physically? I'm not aware of any.
I don't think so.
If you come to any, shoot them to me, please let me know. But I've seen a lot about nature, and that makes sense to me because of evolution. But concrete, I don't think so.
I don't think so. Although they have developed concrete that's lasted a long time, not the kind we use now, but the Romans did.
Yeah.
That's why the major reason why people like you and I do our best to try to preserve and protect a little bit of nature that we have, and to provide access to it is important, and protect our access to it. We have a few parks. Of course, we've done our best to try to protect the trees in Terry Hershey Park up on Upper Buffalo Bayou, but the flood control district had a different idea about what it wanted to do with that land up there.
That's too bad. Yeah, a lot of education to do in our culture.
Yeah.
But
anyway.
So what are some of the benefits of a natural stream, like a natural Buffalo Bayou and a natural Cypress Creek? What are some of the benefits of that? Why should we leave it alone instead of bulldozing it and making it the shape we think it should be and stuff?
Well, for one thing, it's not going to hold that shape. River is going to do what it wants to do and needs to do. And if you try to dredge it and alter the flow of it, there's an underlying geological reason why, as well as other dynamic reasons why the river does what it does. And if you dredge it and bulldoze it and, alter it, it's going to say no, going to just go right back to what it wants and needs to be. So you just have to keep dredging it and then, keep maintaining it. And it's just a really costly, futile process. But the river, the natural river is really best for flood risk reduction, because we had this conversation again yesterday, because trying to collect as much stormwater as fast as possible in big giant concrete pipes and concreted rivers just creates more flooding. And we need to focus on stopping and slowing and soaking in the stormwater before it floods the stream.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a responsibility that all of us have. But the meanders of a stream and the roots of the trees soak up water and hold the banks together, and the meandering stream is longer. Is going to accommodate more water, and slowing down the flow is actually better. So anyway, there's all kinds of, our slogan is nature is the best engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And there's long long history of why nature has developed the techniques that it does.
Yeah, I think that's one thing we need to do with the culture in general. Learn more about science, what it really is. There's a lot of misconceptions from Plato about what science is, from Immanuel Kant, from like Thomas Kuhn. Some people like him, but he's just in the tradition of Kant and Plato. Very wrong. Need to be more Aristotelian and look at reality. Aristotle was a great biologist. Yeah, so unfortunately, a lot of people don't know about that, but great biologist. Even Darwin said, he might have been exaggerating a little bit, I don't know, but when someone sent him a copy of some of Aristotle's works, and he said, Darwin said 2 of the people that he were his heroes seemed as mere schoolboys compared to Aristotle.
Interesting.
And I think it was just like a nice compliment, but a compliment, but still real. But
there's a whole movement in engineering now called biomimicry to study the way nature's engineering and understand it and use it. And I think that's one of the problems we have in locally, and I'm sure elsewhere, is that there's plenty of engineers who do I don't know what to call it, basic engineering as we know it, but when we're trying to deal with flood management, for instance, there are not enough engineers who are also biologists, who have that background or even geologists or whatever, who can fill both those needs, the kind of crossover need that we have to understand how a river, what do we want to do, to work with nature to reduce the risk of flooding.
That's good.
There just aren't enough people yet that are, and this is not my idea, this was told to me by other experts, that there's just not enough people with a kind of background to do that. So for young people listening here today, I'm urging you to go into bioengineering, and we need that.
Yeah, and look at a different view of science. People look at it too narrow. If science is done properly, it doesn't just stop at some point. It's a full integrated understanding of the world. So you got these engineers who maybe are trained in the hydrology and the physics, and there's this much water, so if we get rid of this much in this much time, it'll be okay. Well, no, because what about the dirt, the water absorption capacity, the trees, the other stuff, the geology, the hydrology, the ecology? Some farmers are doing better work and are farming with nature instead of against it. And Gabe Brown, for example, when he first got his farm, or when he was doing things that are quote unquote conventional, his soil would absorb about 1/2 inch of water per hour. But
Mm-hmm.
in finding out how nature works and working with it instead of ignoring it and trying to tell it what to do, now some of his soils can absorb 8 inches of water in an hour. Imagine if
Mm-hmm.
we had that.
Yeah.
People worry about flooding. If we had more soil that could absorb that much water, how much better off would we be?
Yeah. Really. Well, this is an issue that I'm going to be writing about in the future because there's a debate
Cool.
about our soil, our clay soil here in the Houston region, and
Hmm.
how much it can actually absorb. Of
Hmm.
course, it's not all clay soil, um, but there's differences of opinions about that. There's some people claiming that our clay soil doesn't absorb anything; it's just as hard as concrete, so we might as well just continue to pave it over and
Hmm.
develop as much as we can. And others say no, that's not true. If you can have proper plants, and even if it doesn't absorb that deeply, though the plants, the roots will help do that. The plants on the prairie, in your own garden, your front yard will
Hmm.
slow down the stormwater.
Hmm. Yeah.
And we need to, people, I often try to explain the concept of lag time, because lag time is the amount of time that it takes for the rain to hit the ground and run off and enter the
Hmm.
stream. And the shorter the lag time, the higher the peak flow
Hmm.
in the stream. So what we need to do is lengthen the lag time. And you could just do that by minutes, everywhere or in many places. It will help with flooding. So, but we have a big fight. You have to fight the homeowners associations, and
Yeah.
and all want to have perfect, garden yards, grassy green yards in the middle of winter. I was just out
Yeah.
running today, and all the leaf blowers were at work blowing the leaves off the off the grass. And
Yeah.
I
Get
think
rid
the
of the
leaves
nutrients. Yeah.
are, yeah, I think the leaves are beautiful.
Agreed. Yeah.
It's sad, really.
And like I talked to Jim Fordyce in first interview, episode 2 of the podcast, and as he points out, get rid of the leaves and you're getting rid of a habitat that some insects need to survive, like beneficial insects. So we think of
That's
them as leaves, but they're really habitat.
that's right. Well, then people say, "Oh, yeah, but you can't grow a lawn. You can't have a lawn underneath all those leaves. It'll kill the grass." I'm saying we don't need those kind of grassy
Yeah.
lawn.
Yeah.
We need to change our thinking about what a beautiful front yard is.
Yeah, that stuff, a lot of the homeowners association stuff is based on outdated or like at least context dropping ideas, not thinking about the bigger picture, the biology, the ecology, what we actually need. It's just, well,
Right,
I want this. Well,
right,
what should it really be
right.
like? Because you want beauty. It's not like if it's natural, it's not going to be beautiful. Like, how many people have gone out there and seen purple passion flower? Or,
Uh,
um, what is it? There's some other flowers out here that are just really beautiful. They look like they should be in Costa Rica, not here. I forget the names of some of them right now, but um, natural, local stuff is not like it's not like there's a contradiction, beautiful or local.
right. Yeah. And how much nicer to have your children to be able to run outside in their front yard and see, bees and birds and all kinds of little piece of nature right there.
Yeah, and that's what
Um,
they love.
yeah, and it's good for them.
Yeah, very.
So, and not to mention that lawns as they are today are amongst the most polluting, uh, you know, thing you can do.
Like how so? What are some of
All
the?
that fertilizer and you know stuff they put on there. Not to mention all the pollution from the lawnmowers and the leaf blowers and um, anyway. So that's another campaign too. But
Yeah.
it's part of protecting our streams and protecting us from flooding and unhealthy conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, having more, having more advanced, enlightened yards and trees, and You know, we're so blessed with these beautiful oak trees in
Yeah.
Houston and great pines.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, and as you have discovered, once you start learning about all these systems, about the succession of plants, especially along the banks of in the sandy banks, and how certain plants, establish themselves and start making soil out of the sand and paving the way for the next kind of succession of plant, and then they make the proper conditions for trees, to little saplings to come along and float down and plant themselves. It's really just a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
Just amazing the way that it works.
Yeah.
Those little plants, they're all like keystone species too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
holding the soil, make it possible for things to grow in the first place.
Yeah. Anyway.
But yeah. So, all right. Well, we've gone over long. Susan's busy. She has to go, but a lot of value in that conversation. Hopefully, we can unpack some of that stuff in the future.
Sure. Really great talking with you.
Yeah. Just we got to consider how some stuff we're doing, like the lawnmower pollution and all this other stuff, the fertilizer, is really undercutting our own survival. Think about things I think in Japan, there's a method someone came up with called the 7 whys, WHY. Ask why 7 times instead of just once to see what's going on. And so we should do that. Okay, I'm doing this. So what happens? And then what happens because of that? And what happens because of that? Then we'd be more informed and make better decisions for ourselves and our children and those we care about, have a better local environment.
Absolutely.
And maybe you don't got to leave all the leaves down, but we got to consider, okay, what is a leaf? It's a bunch of nutrients. So basically, we throw all the leaves away and then buy fertilizer to put in our yard. It's like,
right.
Or you get rid of all the water because we don't want it, and then we pay for water to come back.
Yeah, and then there's put them in all those plastic bags and everything.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great talking with you, and I really admire what you do.
Awesome. Yeah, likewise. Thanks. I like your articles and stuff. I'll post a link to it. People can check it out.
Okay.
Got some good stuff about what's going on. But cool. Awesome. Hope you enjoyed that, folks. Right. And thanks, and we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks.